Global Finance, Topic 4, Institutional Foreign Exchange, Spot, and Forward Markets. Copyright Lou Gaddis. In this topic, we'll talk about the structure of the institutional foreign exchange market, and we'll talk about how to calculate currency quotes and transactions in that market, including forward quotes. So when we talk about a foreign exchange market, it's not a physical location. It's just a network of financial institutions, banks, dealers, brokers that exchange foreign exchange. And you can make a case that currencies are the largest market in the world if you look at the dollar value of trades on a daily basis. You say, well, when is the market open? Well, the market's really open all the time. Here's a graph of time. All right, so here's early morning to late afternoon, and what this is Greenwich time, so it's London time. So what you see is London market, say 7 a.m. to early afternoon, is the highlight or the peak of the market. And what you see is there's a lot of trades earlier in the London market because Tokyo is still awake, so there are a lot of trades from Europe to Asia. And then later in the afternoon in London, New York opens. So you see a structure that trades kind of dip in London, trade early and late, as Europe trades with Asia and Europe trades with North America. So what you notice is primarily you have a UK-based market. So this is trades by market. So you can see London is the big market, followed by the US and others. However, they're mostly trading dollars, followed by euros, followed by yen, and the pound, Swiss franc, and others. So they're mainly trading dollars and euros in London. If you look at the types of transactions, now the transaction we're most familiar with are spot transactions. So if you look at the composition of spot transactions, you can see that's not the largest market in the world for currencies. So let's talk about spot versus forward versus swap markets. So a spot transaction, also called a cash transaction, so spot or cash transaction is a transaction where delivery is near immediate. So I can call, one bank can call another financial institution and say, I'd like to buy €1 million from you. And then they get a quote of, say, $1.15 a euro. And you say, fine, let's do it. Now, delivery may happen in a day or two. So it's not immediate, but close to near immediate delivery and payment. Another market is the forward market. The forward market is you negotiate the terms of a trade. Say, I'd like to buy €1 million for $1.15 1 month from now. That would be a forward contract. You have negotiated all the terms of the exchange. The only thing that differs from a spot transaction is that delivery and payment happens at a later date. So that would be the forward market. It's the trading of currencies for future delivery. And also notice that these contracts are not cancelable, so you must deliver if you enter into these contracts. Now the largest market is actually the swap market. And the swap market, you can think of it as a bundling of forward contracts. In other words, Dell Computers might find that it's going to receive €1 million a month for the next 24 months from its sales in Europe. So it needs to convert over the next 24 months euros into dollars. Now it could negotiate 24 separate forward contracts. Say you might call a bank and say, give me a price for next month and a month after and a month after and 12 months from now and so on, and negotiate each contract. But you can negotiate one master contract, a swap, and say, well, what exchange rate would you give me to exchange all the cash flows, say $1 million a month for the next 24 months, and you might get a quote of, say, 115. Well, if they agree upon those terms, you'll exchange euros for dollars for $1.15 every month for the next 24 months. So that's actually the largest market. So you got swap, spot, and forwards. So you can see a normal currency trading floor. You might have lots of screens going on. You're looking at different markets around the world because all of those will affect currencies. You might look at equity markets and bond markets and have the news on TV, see if there's anything happening, and follow a number of currencies, maybe some trends, and also recognize that these currency traders are really the same, doing the same thing these guys are doing. They're just trading paper. This is a Bloomberg screen showing that interbank market or the institutional market. And what you see is the first currency, the EURUSD, that would be the dollar price of the euro. On this day, it was trading for $1.4788 per euro. All right, so these are direct quotes. And what a trader might say that day, what happened is a institution might go to Bloomberg, pull up this screen, which is, by the way, FXGN. See that, and say the bank wants to buy euro. It'll see that Bloomberg has an ask price of $147.90. Now, what these data organizations like Bloomberg and Reuters do is they collect lots of bids and lots of asks from lots of financial institutions, and they give up an indication of kind of where the market is, the best price. So what they found is the lowest ask from their contributors was $147.90. That's kind of the best maybe you can do. And the highest bid, for if you want to sell euros, was $147.88. So this gives you an idea, kind of as good as things can get, the most efficient transaction. But remember that this system, this foreign exchange market, it's not a centralized location. This is just kind of a survey of banks of where the market is. So you might see that the euro is trading for $147.90 on Bloomberg. So what you'll probably do is call your friends, your network of other financial institutions that you normally do business with, and say, hey, I'd like to trade for a spot transaction. I want to buy 100,000 euros. I saw on Bloomberg $147.90. Can you do that? And the person on the other side might say yes, or I can only do $147.92. So can you accept that? So that's how the market works. You look online or on these systems like Bloomberg and Reuters or Telerate, kind of see where the market is. But in the end, you would probably call or use maybe an online trading system with your banks you normally trade with. Now, in this market, the bid is $147.88. Right, that would be to sell a euro, and $147.90 is the high price you'd buy a euro. But sometimes you'll just quote the last decimal places. So you might say the bid is $147.88 and an ask of 90. So what someone's just telling you is that last couple decimal places. And we can also look at the yen. So this is the yen price of $1. So the bid is $109.72 with an ask of $109.74. So if a bank wants to buy the dollar, it'll pay the high price, $109.74. They're buying the dollar, selling the yen. Or the low price of the dollar. If they want to sell dollars, buy yen, this is the exchange rate. So this market, you might say it's $109.72 bid and 74 ask. Or sometimes they'll just quote the last couple of decimal places and say, well, the bid ask is 72.74, kind of assuming everyone knows that it has 109 to start with. And on this last exchange rate, 178.88 bid, 90 ask, they might just assume everyone knows the market is 140 something. So they might just say I'm at 788, 790 bid ask. So using that, just like when we talked about retail markets, when anyone faces a bid ask market like this, even a financial institution, a large bank, right, they're always going to pay higher and receive less. So here's a problem that asks that if a financial institution knows it wants to exchange pounds, 100,000 pounds for Canadian dollars, they want to buy 100,000 pounds, and they ask, well, how many Canadian dollars is that going to cost me? Well, we're going to need a Canadian dollar for pound exchange rate to turn this into Canadian. However, if you look up here, there is no Canadian dollar for pound exchange rate. But we have both of them quoted against the dollar. We have a dollar per pound exchange rate and a CAD per dollar exchange rate. So again, this is dollar pound, this dollar price of 1 pound, and this is the Canadian dollar price of 1 US dollar. So to do a cross rate, I will need a Canadian per dollar exchange rate times a dollar per pound exchange rate those dollars will cancel out. Now the question is, well, which exchange rates do I use, the bid or ask? Well, in this case, the question asks, how much would it cost? And if you use bid-ask markets, sure, it's going to cost you more than you prefer. So you're going to pay the high Canadian per pound exchange rate, which is the high Canadian per dollar exchange rate times the high dollar per pound exchange rate. So I'll take the high Canadian per dollar exchange rate, since these are Canadian per dollar and I don't need to invert it, times the high dollar per pound exchange rate. Well, this is dollar per pound, so I don't need to invert this one either. So if I take my 100,000 pounds times these two rates, what you'll see is the answer is B, 198,238 Canadian, or loonies. So here's another problem. It's a good problem because it makes you think about kind of the wholesale interbank market versus the retail market. Say you go to your local bank and you say, I'd like to buy euros, and they say, well, our current price for euros is 119 bid, 145 ask. In other words, you can buy euros for 145, or if you want to sell them to us, we'll give you 119. So we'll consider this the retail market. Now, when the bank goes to their Bloomberg screen, or Reuters, or whatever, they're looking at the wholesale market. It's one way of thinking about the interbank market, and they see these prices. So the bank can buy euros at 133 and then sell them to you for 145. So a problem is, what are the US dollar bank profits if a customer buys 1,000 euros at the retail price and the bank buys the euros from the interbank market? Well, from the perspective of the bank, their bank customer is going to pay that high price per euro, $1.45. So they're going to get $1,450 from the customer to deliver 1,000 euros. So that's their revenue. Now they need to go out and buy the 1,000 euros, but they're faced with this market, and they're also going to pay the high price, 133.11. So their cost is $1,331. So their profit is $1,890 per every 1,000 euros traded. So this gives you an idea of, there's a wholesale market for currencies, which is maybe represented by this or another Reuters or Bloomberg screen. And then there's a retail market, either at the bank when they post foreign exchange rates, or in an airport. So let's talk about forwards. Again, spot transactions are transactions where there's near immediate delivery, or say 1 or 2 days delivery. A forward contract is a contract in which you negotiate all the terms: price, currency, pair. Right? Or I want to trade euros for dollars. Quantity, delivery date, location. You negotiate all these things. You sign a contract today, no money exchanges hands, and then at that delivery month, say 9 months from now, if I have a contract where I'm required to buy euros, I have to go there, bring my dollars, and take my euros with me. Or it's settled electronically. Now there's 3 ways you can quote a forward price. You can either give them an outright quote, give them points to add or subtract to a spot price, they're called swap rates, or an annualized forward premium or discount. So let's talk about outright quotes and forward points or swap rates. So say the spot market for the euro is 125.46 bid, 125.78 ask per euro. And say your quoted forward points of -49, -40. So what this refers to is actually the last couple decimal places of the currency quote. So every currency is quoted in the spot market at either 2, 3, or 4 decimal places. As you can see, the euro is quoted in 4 decimal places. So if you see 4 decimal places in the spot market, and someone quotes you negative 49 points for a 1 year forward. What that means is what they're quoting back to you is the last few decimal places. So if I were to line up the spot price, 125.46, right? 1, 2, 3, 4 decimal places. And then if I were to right justify the 49, you'd see it's lying on the third and fourth decimal place. So to actually do the subtraction, I need to subtract 0.0049 to get the outright quotation of 124.97. So that's my forward price. And if the quote were negative 40 points on the ask, the 40 goes to the last 2 decimal places. So I'm going to right justify 40 against the 4 decimal places in the spot and subtract 0.0040, like I subtracted 0.0049 to get the outright quotation. Now here's an example with a 2 decimal place currency. Say the yen price of $1 is 78.45 bid, 55 ask in spot markets. And you're told that the points for a 1 year forward is 122.144. Now, these decimal places, if I were to right justify and line them up, look like this. So if I were to right justify, that 122 lines up at the first and second decimal place for the 2 and the 2, and this one's in the ones column. So to add 122 points to an exchange rate of 78.45, I'll add 1.22. And this one I'm going to add 1.44 to get an outright quotation. Now, it's a little more complicated in that sometimes a forward market has more decimal places than a spot market. So you might see the spot is 78.45 bid, 55 ask, and you're quoted 122.2 points for the forward. So how this lines up is the 122 still lines up and the 144 still lines up against the last decimal places in the spot. What's after this decimal place in the forward points or swap rates is actually an extra level of precision. So in other words, line up this 122 and 144 like we did before. So it's 1.22. Now that whatever's after the decimal place, that's actually going out to the third decimal place. So I'm going to add 1.222 to show one more level of precision. So that's a way of giving a 3 decimal place forward price when you have a 2 decimal place spot price. So here's a Bloomberg screen showing the US dollar spot and forward markets. The spot's at 147.86 bid, 87 ask. And let's look at the 3-month forward prices. So it's quoted at negative 71.45, 71.45. So it looks like I need to subtract. So it looks like the euro is getting cheaper for a later delivery. That's called it's selling at a discount. It's cheaper to buy it later than today. Now the 71 refer to the last 2 decimal places, the third and fourth decimal place. So actually to get the outright quotations, which are listed over here, I need to subtract 0.007145. The 45 refer to the 5th and 6th decimal place. And then to subtract 70.95 swap rates or points to this ask, I need to subtract 0.007095. So again, what's after the decimal in the forward points is actually referring to more precision, more decimal places than what the spot is showing. And likewise, let's look at just this one here. The 1 year is selling at negative 242.25 points. Well, 242, this refers to the second, third, and fourth decimal place. In other words, 0.0242. the 2.5 refers to the 5th and 6th decimal place. So I would subtract 0.024225 and 0.024035 to get these outright quotations. All right, so that's how we quote forward prices, by telling you what to subtract or add to the spot market. Now, the advantage of doing it this way is, one, it's much faster to quote -242 than an outright quotation. And also visually, by just focusing on this column here of the forward points to add or subtract, I can see exactly how the premium, or the discount goes up over time. And if you're used to looking at this currency, you're going to spot right away the 1 year selling at about 2.4 cents less than the spot. Now you could do the subtraction yourself by taking 147 and 145, the difference there. But it's really much easier to spot the discounts by looking at the column of points to add or subtract. So here's an example. Say the Aussie dollar, that's the AUD USD, is selling at 0.7630 in the spot market. Now this is a Reuters screen. Now this particular Reuters screen just shows one spot. It doesn't show a bid or ask. So all you know is the spot price is 0.7630. That's a 4 decimal place currency for the Aussie dollar. And it says that the 6-month swap rates or forward points are -52.5, -52. Now the question is, what is the actual quotation, outright quotation for 6-month delivery? Well, this is a 4 decimal place currency. There's no bid and ask, so I'll have to use this last price here that was given. The 5 and 2 must refer to the 3rd and 4th decimal place. So I need to subtract 5 and 2. So let me put a couple zeros in front of it. So I'm going to subtract 0.0052, 5. That would be the 5th decimal place. And that will give me 75,775 for the bid. And for the ask, looks like I just need to take my spot and subtract 0.0052 to get 75,780. Now, a third way that the currencies are quoted is just do calculate a forward premium or discount percentage. Say the spot price of the euro is $1.50 and the forward price is $1.60. If I just compare the forward to the spot and do a percent difference, percent change, the forward minus the spot over the spot is a 6.67% difference. So what we'd say is the forward is selling at a 667 basis points premium. So that's another way to quote the prices on a currency. However, when you have an indirect quote, it gets a little more difficult. All right, so let's recap on this one. If I take forward minus spot over spot, that'll tell me the forward premium or discount, premium being positive, forward being positive, negative number being a discount. However, if I were to look at an indirect quote, say the spot price of the yen is 115 per dollar, and the forward price is 110 per dollar. Now, if I just took a forward minus spot over spot, that'll tell me about the dollar, because remember, this is the price of a dollar. So what I see is the dollar is getting cheaper, so the dollar, it looks like it's at a discount. Now, if I did forward minus spot over spot, you'd see how much cheaper the dollar is quoted in yen, or priced in yen. So if I want to know what the yen, if the yen's getting more expensive or cheaper, let me flip both exchange rates to make them dollar price of a yen. 1 over 115 and 1 over 110. Now you can clearly see that it's $0.008696 per yen in the spot market and $0.009091 per yen in the forward market. And if I took forward minus spot over spot, you can see that the yen is at a 4.5% premium. Now you could do that, always use forward minus spot over spot, and sometimes invert currencies to put the base currency, the one you want to talk about, in the denominator. But you can use a rule, just like we did in appreciations and depreciations a couple topics ago, that if I do forward minus spot over spot, that tells me about the denominator currency. In this case, right, this was the dollar price of a euro. So if I did forward minus spot over spot, it tells me about the euro. If I do spot minus forward over forward, just like we did old minus new over new in appreciations, that'll tell me about the numerator. So if I just take 115 minus 110 over 110, the spot minus forward over forward, that also gives me the 4.5%. It's identical mathematically, and it's just a lot easier to calculate. So here's an example. The Canadian dollar is selling for 102.45 in spot markets and 100.59 in forward markets for 3-month delivery. So we're going to look at what's the forward premium or discount for the Canadian dollar. Now you have to be careful, right? This is the Canadian dollar price of a dollar. So if I just do forward minus spot over spot, it's going to tell me the premium of the dollar. So in this example, if I want to know, and what you see actually is it looks like the dollar is getting cheaper, right? So the price of the dollar is going from 102 to 10 or less, or almost 1. So you can see the dollar is getting cheaper, so it must be at a discount. So the Canadian dollar must be at a premium. And if I look at spot minus forward over forward, because this is an indirect quote and I want to talk about the numerator, what you see is it's selling for 1.8491% premium. Okay, the dollar is at a discount. The Canadian dollar is a 185 basis point premium. And lastly, we generally, any kind of percent change or interest rate, or what do you want to call it, in finance, we like to annualize it every once in a while. So sometimes we'll annualize the forward premium or discount. So here's an example. In this case, if this were a 3-month discount or premium, I would just multiply this times 4 and call it an annualized premium. And here's another example, kind of talking about the complexities of indirect quotes. Someone tells you the 6-month yen is selling at a 3% annualized, I'm going to circle that, premium to the dollar. The spot price is 90.55 yen per dollar. What is the 6-month forward points? This is a really tough problem because you have to first recognize if someone is telling you that the yen is selling at a 3% annualized premium for 6 months, that means it's actually selling at a 1.5% premium for the price in 6 months. Someone's already doubled it for you. You also have to recognize that this 90.55 is not the price of the yen, it's the price of the dollar. The price of the yen is actually this. So to figure out what the actual price is, I'll first convert the yen-dollar exchange rate to a dollar-yen exchange rate, and then multiply times 1.015, right? It's a 3% annualized premium, but it's only a 6-month delivery, so it must be 1.5% higher. And then you see, well, this is the forward price, dollar per yen. And then we can invert it, because we like to quote the yen in indirect terms, and say that the forward price is 89.21. So there you see the spot price is 90.5, the yen is selling at a 3% annualized premium for 6 months. That means the forward price is actually lower because that reflects that the dollar is selling at a discount. Now, if the forward price is 89.21 and the spot price is 90.55, if I take the difference, that's 1.34. If I want to communicate that on Bloomberg or to a customer, what I might say is the forward price is selling for 134 points below the spot. Because remember, this is a 2 decimal place currency, so I'd communicate this negative 1.34 difference, or it's 1.34 yen, as 134 pips. And here's just another example of an annualized discounted premium. It's actually one close to the example problem I gave you a couple slides ago. The spot price of the Canadian is 102.45, and the 9-month forward is 101.59. What is the annualized, I'm going to circle annualized, 9-month Canadian dollar forward premium discount? So since I want to talk about the Canadian dollar, and the Canadian dollar is in the numerator, I'm going to use spot minus forward over forward. Calculate that percent, which I do. I'm going to divide it by 9 to make it monthly, and then multiply times 12 to annualize it, or multiply that whole function there by 12/9, and you see we'd say it's at an annualized premium of 112 basis points, or 1.1287%. So in this topic, we talked about the institutional market for foreign exchange. We talked about cash flow, how cash flows can be exchanged in that market, and how they communicate both spot and forward prices. And on forward prices, we said we can use outright quotations, swap rates or points to add or subtract, or annualize premiums or discounts.